What is happy? What actually makes us content, satisfied, and fulfilled? We want this feeling, but we often don't know how to get it. Is it as easy as doing what we love and being around people we like? In Nate Ware's TED Talk, which I highly recommend you guys watch, he discusses this concept of happiness. He says,
"We're wealthier than ever, but unhappier than ever. We're more prosperous, but more depressed. We're less satisfied. I mean, we have faster and faster transport, but we're faster and faster to complain about it. We have technology improving exponentially, but we don't see a corresponding increase in our life satisfaction, in our happiness."
After watching this TED Talk, I became more aware of what was making me unhappy and also being more capable now to make happy. This is what I mean. Nate argues that the most pervasive reason why we're unhappy is the expectation gap, when our expectations exceed what we actually experience. Back then, I would let my expectations get the better of me, and they would leave me feeling, upset, stressed, and all of these emotions which you can actually change if you change your perspective. For example, I've mentioned this before in one of my videos, but I was supposed to go back from France to Amsterdam overnight, and I was taking 2 connecting buses. This did not turn out the way I wanted to. My expectation was I was going to take the bus on time, and that would go to the second stop on time, and the second bus would take me to Amsterdam, and I would go straight from the bus station basically to class, and all would be well. What actually happened was the first bus came 1 hour late. I wasn't stressing too much because I thought, I have like 2 hours between my connection. I'm gonna make it. And then on the bus, we experienced really bad traffic. Like, we're not moving anywhere. And I'm really starting to get stressed now because my expectation again is to get back to Amsterdam and make my class. And then to top it off, the bus driver basically says that we're gonna have a 45-minute dinner break and then we're gonna continue on our journey after that. And at this point, I've lost hope. And it was really hard to change my expectations from being there on time to now being late, missing my connection, and going to Amsterdam late, etc. So I spent the majority of this bus ride feeling stressed, frustrated, and anxious. If I didn't have class the next day, I would have felt fine. It would have just been a minor inconvenience, but instead I was feeling all of these negative emotions. When we have things to do and deadlines to meet, we really expect things to go a certain way. But when we don't have things like a time limit or some external pressure, we really don't take things as badly because we don't expect too much from it. Our life is basically centered around expectations. For example, if you eat a food, you expected it to be delicious, and then you bite into it and it's just mediocre. Or you expect something from someone and they don't act in the way that you expected them to. Either situation, it leaves you feeling unhappy. So the easy advice is to just lower your expectations, because if you lower them, you'll be pleasantly surprised if something goes okay or mediocre. For example, I remember in uni, a lot of people didn't want to raise their expectations for a good grade because if they didn't get it, they'd be really disappointed. But I really don't believe it's about lowering your expectations. Instead, it's about making realistic expectations or being flexible when your expectations aren't met. So knowing that buses get delayed and you might come to Amsterdam a little bit later than you expected is a realistic expectation. It won't hurt that bad when it actually happens, and you'll be able to work around this inconvenience. But it really doesn't make sense to go into something like a test with low expectations. By doing this, it might even affect how you approach your test in terms of studying and being motivated or demotivated if you've already prepared for the worst. Instead, being aware that getting a bad grade is possible, but still aiming high and not preparing for the worst is possibly the best strategy. Because if we approach life with low expectations, chances are we're going to experience only mediocre things. We won't dream big because that invites chances to feel unhappy, frustrated, or worried. So all of these expectations I've mentioned have been created through our imagination, where it basically creates a future that hasn't happened yet, and it assumes how people will act and how things will turn out that are completely out of our control. So I'd recommend internalizing one of my own life mottos, which is to plan but be flexible. This has allowed me to set high expectations, but still be flexible enough to change my perspective when things don't work out the way I wanted them to. The other cause of unhappiness that Nate mentions is our comparison to other people. We feel happy if we get a better grade than someone in class, when we have a better job position, or even if we're prettier than people. But the downside of comparison is that when we compare our successes to other people, something we considered amazing is now mediocre because someone has had a better and bigger achievement. So Nate asks the question,
you get to choose your salary. What do you pick? You get 50,000 and everyone else you know gets 50,000. You get 50,000 and everyone else gets 60. Or you get 40,000 and everyone else you know gets 30. The correct answer was actually C, in terms of what actually makes us content, satisfied, and happy, as the research has shown.
People are actually happier getting 40,000 instead of 50,000 because while objectively they get less money, people with 40,000 compare themselves to people around them. They feel happier as a result. Same goes for me at the gym. Recently, I started doing body pump and I love it. It is such a good workout, but things I've learnt. First of all, I have muscles that I never thought was possible to make before. And second of all, I've never been more aware of comparing myself to other people. I essentially judge myself based on the weight of my bar compared to other people around me. If I'm going lighter than them, I feel pretty weak, and then if I go heavier, I feel better about myself. Personally, to get out of this habit, I have to keep reminding myself of these things. We are all on different levels. People who are carrying heavier or lighter weights than me are all at different stages in their fitness journey. We all have different fitness goals, we all progress differently, and some people might have already done it for 4 years and some for just a month. I also tend to remind myself when people are carrying heavier weights than me to admire instead of compare. They are so ripped. I see people who are like 60 and they are carrying the heaviest weights. And this is just admiration. I'm sending admiration across the room because they are insane. I also have to remind myself to be humble. With people who are carrying lighter weights, I'm not any better than them because I was once in their position. So the best solution is to compare yourself only to yourself and only mark your progress depending on how you're doing. And another example I want to share about comparison was my time in Slovenia. It's a really beautiful place and I love it. And I was in the capital city of Ljubljana, where I actually felt quite lonely and quite sad when I was solo traveling. But then when I traveled to countryside Slovenia, I instantly felt happier. And then to top it off, I came back to Ljubljana and felt sad again. So I actually realized that it's not that Ljubljana is a bad place, but I felt lonely because I saw all of these other people with their friends and families. It was really busy and I felt left out. But in the countryside, it was super quiet. There was really no one there apart from other backpackers. So I had no one really to compare myself to, and that's why I felt happier. Comparison can really affect how we feel, and often that could mean feeling unhappy. But what really helped me was to accept my emotions and to realize I was comparing myself to others. And I also managed to reframe my situation because I was across the world in Slovenia. And when you're traveling, you will experience highs and lows because that's normal. But mainly highs because I had the best ice cream in Ljubljana, and I will actually link it below because it deserves as much love as it can get. So to conclude, before watching this TED Talk, I really didn't know how my expectations were affecting me negatively. That it really determined how I viewed things and how it could lead to my unhappiness. But now I've really learnt that by setting realistic expectations and comparing your progress only to yourself without imagination and without comparison getting in the way is how we can slowly move towards making happy. Hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!